All right, we are live. This is PHP Moderately Attractive episode number 1. I'm here with Eric Van Johnson from San Diego. How are you, Eric?
Hey, Michael, how's it going?
You know, it's been better. Um, for those of you that follow me on Twitter, I've been trapped in your wonderful country. They didn't want me to leave. I had delay. I think I was delayed 8.5 hours out of JFK yesterday, so I was kind of stuck here. Um, and they kept on delaying the flight, pushing it back. They wouldn't cancel it. They're like, no, no, no. It's just a this is a normally a simple fix. We'll get you out. We'll get you out. And then they ended up delaying the connecting flight by 3 hours. So I kind of feel bad for all the people that were stuck in LAX yesterday, waiting for us to come in from JFK, and then that not happening. Obviously, they delayed that flight in the end. I think 3.5 hours before they went. It's not going to happen. So got here
Incredible.
into LA at like 3 a.m. And then it was waiting in line with everyone else that had to have rebooked connections, and then finding out that the rebooked connection wasn't going to be until tomorrow. So instead of getting home to my family on Sunday, I'm not getting home to them until Tuesday, and basically going straight to work from the airport, which is going to be a whole lot of fun. So it's been a wild ride, but it worked out
Well,
okay.
you should consider yourself lucky in our current climate. All the people trying to get into the country and aren't being allowed in,
Yeah,
and we're just not going to let you go. You're just that special of a person to us.
yeah, it's easy for us Australians, thankfully, because we're part of the ESTA waiver program. So I just have to pay your country $14, and then they say, no worries, come in, which makes coming through customs and border protection and all that stuff really easy, because I just like it's all these automated kiosks. I just scan my passport and do the finger thing, and off we go. So yeah, it's I mean the weather's nice here. There are probably worse places to be trapped. I took a stroll out to the UCLA Health and Fitness Center to check that out. Bought a bunch of stuff at the Lakers store. Spent a bit more money than obviously I was expecting to be home by now, so I was not expecting to spend any money, but we'll see how we go. But yeah, it's
I
been
tell you,
alright.
after spending a week in New York for Laracon,
Yeah,
I was happy just to have a day of not walking around.
yeah. No, I mean when you're gearing up to fly 14 and a half hours, you want to get as much exercise into your legs as possible. When I'm gonna go check out the fitness center tomorrow, I was gonna do it today, but I ended up just sleeping until 11 because I'd been awake for 20 hours after making the most of the Laracon trip, and catching up with everyone and sleeping very little and having very long days. So I will I will definitely fall asleep. My wife hates it, but that anytime that we've done a trip like this, on the way back out of back home for the long haul flight, I've fallen asleep before they even do the safety demonstration and woke up 8 9 hours later. So good thing nothing bad happened, because I wouldn't know what to do in case of emergency.
So what you think of Laracon?
I thought it was great. I think the theatre. I was talking to a friend of mine who does a lot of work in the Drupal community, and he's been to a ton of Drupal cons. He's spoken at them, and I said, who would have thought that a PHP framework of any description would be filling out a 900 seat theatre on Times Square
Yeah,
for all the commentary and all the bashing and all of the Laravel is not a real framework that you hear out in the wider PHP community. None of them. There's no. I mean, Symfony's big, but there's Symfony's not in that place. Um, the other frameworks, Cake. I know that you're a fan of Cake. None of those. I think Taylor really found the right balance between open source and a commercial model
hmm,
for all of the supporting software, the SaaSes, things like that. That really makes this kind of stuff possible. So it's been fun to hitch my wagon to that ride and come along for that journey from.
hmm.
I mean, I was later to the adoption of the framework, but it's just been fun even in the last, I think, 5 or 6 years that I've been in, just seeing it grow, and just I'm sure even Taylor said it before, wildly be beyond his expectations. So
Yeah, yeah. I
What?
definitely think that it's been turning a corner the last couple of years with kind of we've spoke about a little bit, kind of really establishing what the ecosystem is looking like for Laravel, and putting the certain services in place to just allow people who are adopting the framework to kind of grow and be more successful. I mean, with Envoyer and Forge, those services, not to mention, what he released this year.
Yeah, yeah. And it's it's just it's been magical. Like I would imagine that at some point in the future, it'll be even if this all comes to a crashing end, it's been a wild ride from so many people's perspectives, but it just changes so many people's lives in so many different ways, in being able to get jobs that people want, in being able to release software that people want. And Matt Stauffer in his presentation went through a lot of that kind of stuff. And now, as a community, we're trying to look to like getting more people into the community and to empower them to have those opportunities as well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with OnRamp, which he spoke about at the end of his talk at Laracon, and see how that goes in terms of getting like people that are not PHP developers. Laravel is very approachable for people that know PHP, but being able to bring people that are straight out of boot camps and things like that, and really bringing in that next wave of Laravel developers and giving them the same opportunities that we've had in the future would be really cool.
I really liked the part of Matt's talk where he kind of he was very adamant about the idea of, let's not fall into, you see it a lot in the WordPress communities where people don't consider themselves PHP developers, they consider themselves WordPress developers. And he put some message out there of, you will always be a PHP developer. Let Laravel be your framework, but don't be a Laravel developer, be a PHP developer. And I think that speaks loads to how certain people in the Laravel community are trying to make sure that we don't lose that attachment to the underlying language that's making all of this possible.
Yeah,
That was meaningful to me when he said that. I'm glad, and I'm very happy he said that too.
yeah, it's very important, because yeah, as you say and as Matt said, there are people that are WordPress developers that they don't know a lick of PHP, because you can install those page builder plugins and you can buy themes and really just piece everything together without ever poking under the hood. And obviously there's some people out there that do start poking around and they do start going into the innards of WordPress, but Laravel really is something that gives you the ability to like dig in and really build things that you want to do custom. So it'll be cool. I'm looking forward to this next evolution, I think, and to see what shape that takes. But yeah, but speaking of that evolution, the reason that two reasons that I wanted to have this chat. Number one, well, three reasons actually. Number one, because I missed having the chat with you in New York. As I said, there was 900 people there, so it was hard to see everyone. Every time I like took 5 steps, there was someone else that wanted to say hello. So we missed out on that during the conference. But the two main reasons: number one, you've through your PHP Ugly podcast have always been a sort of a naysayer to the way that Laravel does, and you're not alone, but you've been vocal about it because you've got that platform in terms of Laravel's versioning scheme. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is serverless and the announcements that came with Laravel Vapor. So I guess give me your perspective on the old sort of paradigm major minor versioning scheme that Laravel had versus now moving towards a proper semantic versioning system.
Right. So yeah, it's no secret that I've been a critic of this in the past, and yeah, I'm pretty upfront about that. I don't mind talking about it, but it really boils down to, so I took a little bit of a evolution of Laravel myself, where I had previously been very community focused, and it was all about building a stronger community. And I think over the years, and as I started a business and started uh, bringing on clients, recommending Laravel to the clients, and then having to maintain those applications, my evolution started to shift a little bit. Where my version of what community was and what Laravel was trying to accomplish, we're a little different. I kind of adjusted my way of thinking of it as more of okay, this is more of my business solution. And when I did that, certain things weren't factoring into that correctly, and the versioning was the big one, right? And so with versioning, it became so the easiest thing to say is it became a real struggle with every time something was released, even though it was showing up as what we would consider a patch release or a minor version in semver, it would have backwards breaking changes.
Yeah.
So going to a client and saying, hey, you have 3 Laravel applications. They're going to take time to upgrade because there are these certain, backwards breaking changes that we need to look for. It was time consuming because there's this whole education process.
Yeah.
Now, if you scale that up to enterprise, that's where this sort of semver versioning really comes into play. So for Laravel or any PHP packages that are out there, it's very difficult to keep their semver version of a package in line with the versioning of Laravel if it's not following semver. So saying what version of Laravel a package is compatible for really puts more of the burden on the package maintainer to follow, what Laravel's releasing in their versions because they're not following semver. So it's difficult because typically, if it's just a patched version of semver, they shouldn't have to worry about their package. If it's compatible with the major minor, it should still be compatible with major minor.
Yeah.
So when you start to move up to enterprise level solution, when you start talking about major minor releases and change workflow to implement these changes becomes very different. I mean, you can have change management boards involved, different managers involved, operations involved. So it becomes very critical in an enterprise environment to understand, hey, this release of Laravel will have a backwards changing break, or this release of Laravel is a major version release because we've changed some paradigm underneath of it.
Yeah.
And it becomes very important in big business to understand that just beforehand and not learning about it as you're trying to implement it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of the issue there was number one, things not always appearing in the release notes and the change logs. It was not always evident. Like you could always see what commits went into a release, right? And those were always pretty good. But in terms of understanding the impact, that was always a little bit trickier. And I think in terms of some of the breaks that we saw introduced into the framework and then subsequent, reverts and things like that, the problem that I always saw, and I think semver doesn't really solve, is being a lot more cautious about things that may break and the unknown unknowns. So semver is all about known unknowns, known knowns. So you can look at something and say the test suite passes in its entirety, therefore there are no breaks in this release. And so in semver, that would be a patch release. But what I saw time and again was things that the test pass and then a new release was tagged, and then maybe an hour later or maybe a day later or maybe a few days later, that behavioral change presented itself downstream in end users. And I think those are the kind of things that I will be like, obviously it's a solvable problem because, Symfony hasn't had backwards compatibility breaks for a long time. Um, so it'll be interesting to see how the approach in development changes and in releasing changes to account for that kind of stuff. I know that Dries is really in charge of the open source side of Laravel at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see. I know that he's like been involved in the community and he's probably been pushing it from within, I think, to get semver into Laravel. So it'll be interesting to see how that happens because you and I both know that all hell will break loose the first time a patch release goes out with one of these breaks
Hmm.
that wasn't anticipated, that broke something downstream. And I think a lot of the time what that's come down to has been the way people have been using or abusing certain behaviors within Laravel that were not necessarily intended or documented. Um, so it'll be interesting. I think semver conceptually, and obviously we've seen in practice, as I said, it solves those problems, but it doesn't like quote solve those problems. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Right, and I honestly I feel like that scenario is even a stronger argument of why you want semver, because when you release a patch version, you're making it known to the audience that, hey, there should be no breaking changes on here. And if, as you said, downstream somebody discovers there's a breaking change, that's immediately a red flag that can quickly get bubbled up back to the framework. Says, hey, you guys said there were no breaking changes, but there is. It's here. This broke.
Yeah.
Whereas before, with the versioning going on, if there was a breaking change, it was just like, hey, did somebody forget to mention this?
Yeah.
This is broken. So I would still say that you're absolutely right. That does happen, and there will be a learning process of understanding, how to release and to make sure you don't have breaking changes. But again, I still feel like that's just a stronger argument of why you want semver in place, so
Yeah.
that everybody understands. Hey, this is our expectation. There should be nothing broken here, and
Yeah.
raise it up if there is.
Yeah. Yeah, and as you say, it'll be a learning process, and it'll happen and it'll go through. So we'll see how we go. Obviously, the underlying framework components have always been semantically versioned. It will be interesting to see what semver looks like in terms of Laravel. I assume it would be like the framework itself that's semantically versioned. So the Laravel / framework repository, which encapsulates all of those underlying Illuminate components. I know that things like Passport, Echo, um, all those first party packages, they've been semantically versioned for a while. What I'm curious
Mm-hmm.
to see play out in the longer term is we've had the minor release every 6 months. So I wonder if this means we're now going to see a new major version every 6 months, or will it be, because I know that Taylor has mentioned that like that will be the versioning scheme going forward, but I wonder if it's absolutely necessary that we need to have a new major release every 6 months. Like if there's nothing breaking, if there's nothing being deprecated and removed from the framework, do we really need to see version 7 in February and version 8 next August and things like that?
Yeah, I'm on board. I hope not. I mean, if that's the way it plays out, that's the way it plays out. But I do hope that maybe there is some restraint of, okay, well, let's build up a couple things before we do our next major release. Let's just not iterate a major release because we want this one feature implemented. Let's build it up a little.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know.
I mean, having the minor releases allows us to have the additive change to Laravel to be able to bring in new functionality whenever. And as long as we're not breaking anything, then I mean, there's not a reason really to need to have a new major every 6 months. I know that's the way things have played out because of the way that the releases have happened, but following the actual major minor patch as opposed to a paradigm minor major minor, it works a little bit better. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, and it's all going to be a big learning experience going forward. I think it's good. I think from I think my perspective, really, nothing will change in terms of what we release. It's just how the numbers in the versioning signify those changes. So
Right.
I think it'll put minds at ease. I think once any of the initial sort of teething issues are sorted out, it'll be better longer term. I don't think Taylor's going to want to pay for for new branding every 6 months for a new release, which he mentioned in his keynote. So it'll be good.
And I did appreciate. I mean, Taylor did kind of give his thought process around his versioning and what 3 meant to him and what 4 meant to him, what 5 meant to him. And I think, I mean, maybe not immediately, but over time, it'll get back to that, where the next major release will be those milestones, like you see with Symfony 2 to Symfony 3 and with the cake environment. It'll get back to those, oh yes, now we're at Laravel 7 or Laravel 8, and it's this paradigm shift again. It may take a while to get there, but I think that won't change as much as Taylor kind of maybe was concerned it would.
Yeah, agreed. But we've got semver now, and the new branding for Laravel 6 looks really, really crisp. I think
very clean.
Yeah. Semver and this new branding is basically all we really needed to really get Laravel into the enterprise, I think. I think we're there. I think we're there. I think we've made it now.
I think you got over one little speed bump. There's a few more hills we have to get over before we're enterprise. But
we'll get there. I think as Laravel the business evolves, Taylor mentioned he's bringing on another employee that starts on Monday. I think as the business evolves, it will be easier to offer that level of support that is needed for like proper enterprisey, the stuff that we always talk about. The enterprise is really about the support, or the stuff that you guys talk about. I think now it kind of exists in a way where if you pay it's done via Patreon as like supporters of Laravel, and it kind of exists. You can have that monthly developer meeting with Taylor, and you've got that more readily available support, but really codifying that and offering it as a first party thing, I think would probably be something to look at in future.
I mean, I like to, personally, I like channeling Jeffrey Way on the whole enterprise piece, in the sense that it's really just a label at this point, and you really shouldn't be that hung up on the label. When again, I have probably isn't quote unquote enterprise. Now, does that mean it can't be used in enterprise? No, it doesn't. If you've ever worked in enterprise, you would understand that. What it means is that if you want to introduce Laravel into an enterprise environment, you have to have certain contingencies defined around your solution.
Yeah.
What an enterprise solution typically brings to the table is, rock solid software, which I don't think anybody's arguing Laravel is there now. That's the good thing, right?
Yeah.
Is the software, the solution itself is there. It's battle tested. It's ready. It can run big sites. Nobody's questioning that. Enterprise companies, in this case, the company would be Laravel, would also include things like SLA and support. We'll have that, as you mentioned, sort of, but not really.
Yeah.
Enterprise solutions also have official training guides. Now, everybody in the Laravel community knows that if you want training, you go to Laracast.
Yeah.
But that's not Laravel. And enterprise companies want to see training coming from the company offering the solution.
Yeah.
The same thing goes with certification, right? There should be some certification process, which again we have certification, but it's certification blessed by Laravel, but it's not certification that's given out by
Yeah.
Laravel. And I think the final thing would be professional services, which is, again, my company does it. We offer professional services for Laravel, but that's not what enterprise wants. Enterprise wants to see professional services from the company that created the
Yeah.
framework.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting, and it'll be. I don't. I honestly, I don't even know if Taylor wants to do that from a business perspective. Like, I don't know if he wants to go into the enterprise, and that's the
And,
other thing that has to be considered.
yeah, exactly. And that's my point. It's like, if this is not something Taylor wants, that's perfectly fine. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't make the solution any less approachable for enterprise. It's
Yeah.
just, you just have to know, the blanks you have to fill in. If you're a developer or you're a manager of a development group in an enterprise setting and you want to introduce Laravel, don't go to your management board and say, "Oh yeah, Laravel is enterprise ready," because they will roll their eyes at you and then not want to listen to you anymore. Go to
Yeah.
your board and say, here's Laravel. Here are the other pieces of the puzzle that we're going to introduce with Laravel. This will make it a complete picture for us. Let's move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things play out in the next little while as things evolve and grow. I was actually thinking about it, wandering through JFK yesterday. It would be fun to do. Like, I would love to go and teach Laravel. I don't know necessarily that I would like to be the person that comes up with the framework for doing that. But if someone, basically, I would take Matt's book and distill that down into, like, these are the things you need to know, and do that over like a 2-day workshop, and do training, which would be a lot of fun, I think, going into businesses that are developing with Laravel. But at the same time, then it would be about teaching the Laravel way of doing things as well. So could be fun.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. So the other thing that I mentioned I wanted to talk about is serverless, and the big announcement out of Laracon this year was Laravel Vapor. So we'll look at this. Look at me. I'm a professional person. I can put this up on the stream. You can all have a look at it. So Vapor is something that Taylor's been teasing for, a while. He mentioned at Laracon that he basically spent 10 months full-time, 40 hours a week on this thing. And what Vapor is it's a software as a solution. It's a serverless deployment platform for Laravel powered by AWS. So you basically give it your credentials for AWS in the same way that you would with Forge. And then it allows you to launch a Laravel infrastructure on Vapor. And it handles all of the simplicity and scalability of serverless. Because I know that you've been playing with Laravel and trying to get it up and running. And there's been some blog posts over the last little while, the last year or two, of people getting it up and running. Being able to dedicate almost a year, the better part of a year, full time, to really dig into the AWS documentation, to understand the limitations and of using Lambda, and to really just build an interface that handles all of this for you, for your Laravel application, and without having to change the way that you write your Laravel applications. You still build an app the same way. You still test it the same way. Vapor gives you tools to deploy, to build, to test. It integrates with your CI environment. So Taylor demoed with the project from David Hemphill and Chris Fidel, Chipper. Basically, you can hook it all in there, run your build pipeline, and then deploy straight out of your build pipeline. But it handles databases, caching. It handles queues for you, cloud storage with S3. It gives you all the metrics. It gives you alerts. It gives you the ability to buy domains, to manage SSLs or TLS certificates, DNS, everything. Everything is basically all in there, and it gives you point in time restoration of your databases. You can, go back to a specific release. It really handles everything for you. And I don't really have, I mean, where I work in my day job, we've got our own metal. We invested a significant amount of money into our own metal to have all of our stuff, because we're a telco. We've got certain requirements around certification. We do ISO 27001. It's an interesting environment. So this is not something for us. And the things that I do on the side, my own website, I think the pricing is very reasonable as someone who won't use it, but as someone who understands where it becomes beneficial, when you need to scale, but when you don't necessarily have the people to manage it full time. And this is obviously, it's on screen at the moment for those watching the video. It's $39 a month. It's $399 a year. You get unlimited projects, unlimited deployments. It handles teams for you right out of the box. And this is in addition, obviously, to your AWS cost. So there's no markup. You basically get a $39 a month bill from Laravel for Vapor, and then you pay Amazon whatever your costs there are. So I know that you've been working on serverless stuff a little bit over the last little while. First of all, tell me some of the pain points that you came across with that, and then tell me what you think is how is this going to help you out and solve those pain points for you?
Sure. First thing, let me just say what I saw of Vapor, and I've only seen what was presented at the at Laracon. It really looks polished. I mean, Taylor really thought through all the different aspects of deploying an application in a serverless environment that you can tell he's put a lot of thought in it. This wasn't what would be the quickest fix here? I mean, he even thought through things like you mentioned, queues, emails, the mailing system, just everything. So I would say I've been interested in serverless now for a good solid 2 years, and really heavily probably the last 6 months. And it wasn't until the last 6 months that PHP seemed like it was becoming more approachable in the serverless environment. Before, every time you tried to deploy PHP, and this is just PHP in general, not even getting into frameworks like Laravel, it was a very clunky process. A lot of workarounds, a lot of node stuff running. It was messy. Learned about a project called Breath, which made deploying PHP more approachable. And I started messing with that about 6 months ago, and that got me really, really excited about PHP on serverless. Because for a long time, I was really questioning whether or not it was even going to be something that was going to be achievable.
Yeah.
Breath made it look like it was achievable, and one of Breath's implementations was specifically around Laravel. So I actually had an opportunity with a client where I was developing a microservice, and just out of, we're like, okay, listen, we're going to deploy this on an EC2 instance. We'll see how it runs there, and I'm going to deploy this with Breath as well. And lo and behold, so there's some concepts around serverless that you have to understand. There's the idea of a cold start, which is basically if your application isn't used, it kind of shuts down, which, again, this is something Taylor has addressed with Vapor. But for me, I mean, I was willing to take that initial cold hit of my application. With the exception of the cold hit, once the application was spun up, it was actually performing better than the EC2 instances. Mm-hmm. And we were having internal conversations of, okay, what is our threshold? Where do we commit to deploying this on a Lambda solution? And this was just, you start to see other services come out. I know there's one out there, ZEIT. I think it's German. Zedit.
Okay.
I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but you know, there were a few services that have been releasing that are supporting PHP as well as many other languages on the serverless platform, but none of them address all the aspects that Vapor is addressing. And the really nice thing about Vapor is, well, needless to say, it's developed by the person who developed the framework. I mean, there's not even going to be anybody who's ever has as much intimate knowledge about the framework as Taylor.
Yep.
He's definitely developed it. He's not trying to accommodate node application, creating Laravel framework application. I am about as giddy as can be about this service. I mean, I'm ready to fork out my $400 the moment Taylor tells me he's willing to take it from me.
Yeah.
Because this is there's no question that serverless is the direction. Right? I mean, we've already seen this evolution of bare metal to virtualization, things like the EC2 instances, and cloud. Serverless is definitely that next evolution of it, and to have such a complete solution built around Laravel, I mean, it's just a no-brainer to me. Provided now, again, I'll throw the little in real world scenarios yet. I mean, nobody has. Taylor hasn't, right? Taylor has stress tested this, and I'm sure there's going to be some iterating through things. Yeah. But the sweet thing about serverless is, as you mentioned, he's putting a front end in a management system to establish services already in Amazon. So he understands queuing systems as they apply to Laravel, so he pulls those in. So there's no reason to think that this isn't going to be anything short of spectacular.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about it. I am super excited about it. Taylor, just let me know when you need me to make up that check, man. You got it.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, it's probably not something that I will get a chance to use. I did say to Taylor, like, I'm just going to put my website on it for a month, right? Because my website is just on like a $2.50 a month Vultr service, and that sits behind Cloudflare, and so nothing ever really hits it. So the theory being, I would pay basically nothing for the AWS costs, because you get the first million invocations or something on Lambda for free. The most expensive part would be the database. And then like there wouldn't be a lot of invocations of Lambda because all of it's going to hit Cloudflare anyway. So I think it's a really interesting thing. I know as someone who's like scratched the surface of the AWS documentation, it's not always pleasant. And the fact that Taylor has built this kind of thing, this service where people don't have to necessarily understand and orchestrate all of that stuff under the hood and abstracted away all of the pain of doing that, it means that people that need to scale in this kind of way can do that without having to worry about making it all work. And as you said, loading node processes in Lambda that run PHP to execute the framework, it's not something that I would even bother trying because it all just sounds like a whole lot of work. What I am curious in is what prompted you to use serverless? Like, what prompted you to use Lambda? What was it, a scale thing? Was it just the type of application you were building? Is it something you just wanted to spin up? Like, I can see we do a lot of geospatial stuff, so I can see this being very useful to set up some Lambda function that you would say, go and generate this polygon, or go and generate these, like we do, like between point A, because we do fixed wireless, so between point A and point B, show me the terrain, and graph if there's anything that would block line of sight for that fixed wireless connection. So I can see a lot of value in that, rather than having a server running that will be running 24/7, 365, but is only used periodically to generate that data. So I'm curious from your side what you're actually doing that would trigger a need for serverless.
Right. So scale is a big thing, right? And I have a cat now. um, Managing scale for clients is always kind of a crapshoot, right? You never know how popular the application can be. You could have clients, and we happen to have a client that that they require that scale for like 2 months out of the year, and then it could die down. And that's a manual process for us where we need to spin up more servers and kind of watch the numbers and wait for the numbers to reduce. And as you mentioned, those servers are running 24/7, so we don't even have the benefit of, well, if nobody's using it, let's dial everything down and save some money. So there's that aspect of it. The other aspect of it is like, we're a development shop, and we really like to stay focused on development. We don't want to be an operations group. And operations is a whole nother talent pool. You got patch management, you got user management, you got permissions, not to even discuss the additional layer of AWS stuff that you talked about. Managing the AWS services is just a whole set of certifications by themselves.
Yeah.
We don't want to be that. We're developers. We love developing, and we want to continue to focus on developing. And a serverless solution allows our environment to stay secure without having us dedicating a person to that process.
Yeah.
And so that's another big win for us. And that's where, the hobbyist who has a personal website might say, I'm not going to spend $40 a month on a serverless solution. And that would be fair.
Yeah.
But any company out there, you're paying more than $40 a month on if you're not paying $40 a month on an operations person, then you probably have bigger problems.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you look at it and for a single person that just wants to play with it because it's the next Laravel thing, you go, no, it's too expensive. It's too expensive. But there's nothing really that does all of this orchestration for you. It's in a single UI. It's got a command line interface if you prefer to do it. Like everything that you can do in the web UI, you can do using the Vapor command line interface because it was built with an API first because it looked like an SPA. So the API was there from day one, whereas Forge was kind of added on later. So that makes it much easier. But even in my job, my CTO and my head of development is very clear. He's like, you shouldn't be managing servers. You shouldn't be building things. We've got a team that does that. As developers, you want to develop. Now, there are DevOps people. There are people that are proficient in both development and in managing the operations and systems and things like that. But those people are always better at one or the other. Whereas if you have a dedicated systems person and a dedicated developer, you know that the developer is going to be really good at development and the operations person is going to be really good at operations. For people that need scale, but they don't have that separate person, sometimes you get the overnight hit, right? And you're the next big thing. You don't have the opportunity overnight to hire that person. Now, because we're just building Laravel applications now, and because Vapor allows you to just push a GitHub repo up and run it in a serverless environment, you can do that overnight. You don't have to worry about finding a good ops person to manage all that kind of stuff for you. So I think, as you say, if you're not paying someone $400 a year, if you're paying someone $400 a year, maybe this is not going to be for you. But if you need the scale to do this kind of stuff, to basically host your applications without worrying about any of that stuff and still being able to build them exactly the same way that you've been building them for the last 6-8 years, however, Laravel is coming up to its 10th birthday now, this would certainly be for you. And if you haven't seen the the keynote, it is out from Laracon. So Taylor does go into as much detail as he could in 45 minutes. He didn't go into a lot of stuff like you talked about the cold boot and things like that, but I assume the concurrent warm caching accounts for that. Taylor recommends using RDS because it's just always running, so you don't have to worry about the hit of the database booting up, which because Amazon has like an on-demand database service, right? Is that what Aurora is?
Correct. Well, there is a serverless version of Aurora. That's
Okay.
correct. And I asked Taylor about that, and because I told him, I'm like, that scares me, and Taylor's like, yeah, I didn't even mess with that.
Yeah. So, and then there was something else that you can do. I don't remember what it was. But there's something that you disable, like pausing of the RDS instance or something. That way you never have to worry about that. And the other thing that I assume Vapor does this for you is that it enables point-in-time backups, which is something that is not a default option, I'm pretty sure. I saw a tweet thread from someone that worked at Amazon that talked about, like, just focus on these things, like use EC2, use RDS, use Route 53. Don't worry about all of this stuff, because whilst this is all cool technology and the promise of serverless and the infinite scalability and all of that kind of stuff is really great, virtual servers are battle and time tested. And so for a lot of situations, that's probably all you need. But for in situations where this works for you, it's solving all the problems. And my favorite bit, as someone who's probably not going to use it a whole lot, is that you can just use it as is. You don't have to change your development workflow one tiny little bit. It's just keep doing what you've been doing all along, and Laravel and Vapor will just abstract it all away, and it'll handle all the environment stuff. Like, you don't have to worry about where the database is or what the database host is or what the username is or the password is. It will just inject all of that stuff for you. So
yeah,
I think I don't know what the market looks like. I for sure think that the market is going to be big enough that it's going to account for the time that Taylor put into it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done it, right? If he didn't see value, if he didn't see the return on investment for Vapor, it wouldn't exist. Like, it would be Vaporware.
yeah, that was pretty brave of him to give it that name, right? Because Vaporware.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think, much like a lot of things that Laravel does, I think Taylor is ahead of the curve here. I would not be surprised by any means to see other companies, even companies as big as Symfony, start to mimic this process of, okay, let's do this specifically for our framework.
Yeah.
I did get a chance to talk to Taylor a little bit after. The biggest question I had for him is, what are the challenges of migrating an existing established application to Vapor, to a Vapor backed system?
Yep.
And he still kind of working through what that looks like, because with serverless, and he is actually using Lambda. I mean, this is not like he's not hiding things where he's actually using EC2 instances.
Yeah.
Because he's using Lambda, all your assets get stored on S3, and URLs are generated for it. So we were kind of talking through what some of those challenges of moving an existing app is, and it was clear. It's like, yeah, that's something that we'll have to work through once we get out there. But things like the database are simple. I did have the question of being able to rotate like a database password for security reasons, and he's like, yeah, that functionality will be there. He didn't show it, but like you said, the super cool thing about it is how much the Vapor environment auto injects your your S3, your database credentials, all this underlying credentials in configuration, Vapor will just auto inject it into your application, so you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
It's super slick.
Yeah, I think, I mean, in terms of migrating an existing application, I think the two main things are going to be database, which should be fairly straightforward. It's an export, a dump and an import.
Mm-hmm.
Assets will be the tricky thing depending on how you're storing them. If they're already in S3, you've got, like, it's just going to work, right? If you have to
Right.
move stuff from local disk, if you're using the local file system storage, that may prove an interesting challenge. So
Mm-hmm.
it will certainly be interesting.
I think it's doable, and I wouldn't even be surprised to see somebody even develop a package to do it for you. Um, I don't see that as being a major hurdle to overcome. It's just something nobody's had time to spend effort on right now,
Yeah.
but it's doable. And I mean, for those interested, Taylor mentions this, and we talked about it some more. You don't lose things like command line access. You don't lose, even if you're used to using like a MySQL GUI.
Yeah.
There's actually a solution for that where it creates a little jump box for you, and you SSH to it, and you can still use your MySQL GUIs.
Yeah.
So everything you're accustomed to having with a Laravel application on a hosted solution, you still have. I mean, I didn't see anything missing anywhere.
Yeah. It's certainly not a it's not a half baked solution as far as I can tell. But Taylor mentioned that there was stuff that didn't make it to the talk where he talked about concurrent warming, memory configuration, application load balancing. It's all included. It just it won't be in the video. Um, but this was all about running serverless Laravel at scale with databases, with caching clusters, with queues, mail, domains, everything needed to deploy whatever the future of Laravel applications looks like. So there's a lot of documentation for this already as well. But really, it was about, I'll just quote Taylor's tweet. It was about wanting people to be proud of PHP. This is the first serverless platform for any language with this feature set, assets, databases, cache, queues, mail, all integrated into one cohesive picture. Trying to do my part to make the next 25 years of PHP glorious. So, I look, I think Taylor is definitely going to leave his mark on this community. I know that you mentioned that Symfony might take on this model and start looking at doing their own thing. I know that they've got like a Forge, like their own version of Forge now as well for hosting. So, look, I think it's great that Symfony coexists with Laravel, and that as even though Laravel is the more popular framework in terms of whatever metric you want to use to gauge that, um, I think it's really good that both of them exist side by side. And my company has like our main our main competition is not like the incumbents, the big telcos that have been around for years and years. It's this other sort of up and coming one that's where we are now 5 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't. My CEO used the word. It's not competition. It's co-opetition or something like that, where
Yeah.
you both exist in the same thing. You're both looking for the same customers. You're both doing it in slightly different ways, but at the end of the day, it's about making the PHP community as a whole better. It's about making people's lives better. It's about enriching their growth opportunities and their employment opportunities, and building cool stuff that like before just wasn't possible. That you can just rapidly scaffold something out and get it out there, and then know that it's gonna stand the test of time. And people will knock on Laravel and they say you can write bad code, and it facilitates bad code, and it like forces you to write bad code, but that's all phooey. Like, you can write bad code in Symfony just as you can do it in Cake, just as you can do it when you inevitably hand roll your own framework for whatever reason. So um, I'm excited for the future of Laravel, and like keeping up with it all. I'm in a fortunate position where I can do that, and it'll be interesting to see what people come out with over the next 12 months as they start using Laravel 6 and they start using Vapor and things like that. So we're in a good spot, not only as a Laravel community, but as a PHP community as a whole. I think there's the resurgence from PHP 7 has been incredible.
Oh, the last 5 years have just been fantastic. I mean, it just the fixes that have been made to the underlying language, the speed increases, and then yeah, introducing frameworks like Laravel. And like you said, you're always going to have your purists out there, people who don't believe in frameworks, who think that they hurt more than help, and whatever. I mean, they don't need to use them. Like you said, bad coders are going to write bad code. One of the things I think that the Laravel group, the Laravel community has done in general, especially with the help of people like Jeffrey Way and Matt, is that there is definitely this sense of good coding practices and testing. And I mean, things that have always been there but have never really been preached in the community as much as it's preached in the Laravel community.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think whatever. If the solution works for you, and I think something like Vapor is just going to strengthen the Laravel solution as a whole, then that's what you're going to go with. So
yeah, I think we'll probably wrap it up now. But I think from again circling back to Matt's talk, he was talking about Laravel is one of those communities where we don't bash each other, like that the DDD people coexist with the rapid application people, and the active record people coexist with the doctrine, the data mapper people. And there are different ways to achieve the same goals, and everyone's happy to just use the same framework to be able to do that in whatever way suits them, in whatever their preference is. So, yeah, I think we're in a good spot as a community. We're in a good spot as a framework, and we're in a good spot as a language. So bring on the next, what have I been doing this for? 11, 12 years. Bring on the next 11, 12 years. It's only going to get better. Although I've somehow found myself becoming like a manager now, so I don't know how much programming I'll get to do at work over the next 12 years, but I'm looking forward to you can pry PHP from my cold dead hands.
that's right. I mean, that's the key, right? No matter what your role is, PHP can always be a solution. Whether you're managing that solution or you're coding that solution, solutions, frameworks like Laravel, you can always kind of have a role in it. So.
Yeah.
And then you can always code when you get home. Your kid will get old enough eventually where you don't have to watch him all the time.
Yeah.
You can always code.
Yeah.
Coding's like art. You'll always find time to code. If you're a developer, if you love coding, it doesn't mean that you do it professionally. It means that you're an artist, and artists do the work when they have time to do their work. So
that's it. Cool.
Keep coding.
Yeah. Well, thanks for taking the time. It was nice and easy. Like, we didn't even have to plan this because we're in the same time zone. So it's like, I'm free, you're free. Let's do it like right now. So thanks for taking the time. I know that we it's much harder when I'm in the down under, or the upside down. So
I'll always make time for you, Michael. You know that.
That's true. That is very
always
true.
All
right. Well, take it easy. Thanks to those of you that did sit through. There's a few of you left over. I will publish this on YouTube if it's not already there. I don't know if it ended up on YouTube. It was supposed to. I don't know how this thing works. So it definitely was on Periscope. I'll upload the video to YouTube after I finish recording.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Cheers.